Welcome to Phoenixmasonry Live,
a show about Masonic museum artifacts,
interviews,
Masonic history,
and much more.
I am Frederick L. Milliken, Executive Director of Phoenix Masonry.
And I am Elena Llamas, Director of Public Relations for Phoenixmasonry.
And we are here to
celebrate
our Freemasonry.
Celebrando nuestra francmasonería.
And that's what we do here. We celebrate our Freemasonry. And today we're celebrating with British Freemason Martin Faulks.
Hey
Hello,
there.
Martin. Welcome to the show.
I feel like I should do something celebratory now after that introduction.
Well, you can say hello to our audience. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming, Martin.
Hello, everyone.
Martin Faulks, born in Norwich, England. Martin Faulks is known internationally as a meditation master, adventurer, and spiritual warrior.
Martin is the General Manager at Lewis Masonic, the oldest Masonic publisher in the world, founded in 1886.
Martin's interest in history and philosophy led him to Freemasonry. He was initiated into Burlington Lodge number 96, one of the earliest founded lodges in England. In December 2001, Burlington was one of the two lodges that founded the Emulation Ritual of Improvement, which went on to found Emulation Ritual, which is the most popular form of Masonic craft ritual in the United Kingdom. Martin took the chair in 2008 and is currently charity steward of the lodge.
He is a member of Mark Masonry, Tower Hamlets Lodge, and Royal Ark Mariners.
He is currently past master of Canonbury Tower Lodge, London. The former home of Sir Francis Bacon, this lodge is filled with some of the most interesting and scholarly minds in Freemasonry.
Other Masonic memberships include
QCC, Quatuor Coronati Correspondence Circle,
the Lodge of Living Stones,
Royal Arch.
Cornerstone Society.
Martin lives in Suffolk in a log cabin surrounded by woodland.
He has a black belt in Japanese ninjutsu, Bujinkan Budo, Taijutsu, and the Korean martial art Kuk-Sol Won, and is proficient in the spiritual disciplines of China, including Tai Chi, meditation, Qigong, and the legendary form of Yi Ying Ying.
He is a four-time national martial arts champion and a regional fencing champion.
Martin is also the author of numerous books on the subjects of martial arts, health, spirituality, and philosophy. Titles:
Enlightened Living, the book we will be discussing today.
The Emerald Tablet, a commentary on the path of the true adept.
Shugendo, the Way of the Mountain Monks.
Black Soul Mirror.
The Zen Diet Revolution.
The Path of the Ninja.
Becoming the Lotus.
Butterfly Tai Chi.
Becoming a Ninja Warrior.
Secrets of Rejuvenation.
Zen Food.
Martin's life work has been to learn and master the art of meditation. To do this, he has gathered what is of use to him from different traditions, monasteries, and spiritual schools.
His Masonic books include
Laughter on the Level.
Jason Talbot, the Masonic Detective.
The Sign of a Mason.
How many Freemasons does it take to change a light bulb? Well, that's an interesting question to start off with. How many Freemasons does it take to change a light bulb?
This is a joke that has lots of different possible punchlines. So my favourite one is, it's a secret.
Oh.
But I think the most realistic one is, and it depends on telling a joke. Something like 20 to recognise the light bulb needs changing, 2 to bring it to the attention of the worshipful master, 4 to form a light bulb changing committee, 5 to put together the light bulb tombola, 2 to arrange the light bulb commemoration changing plaque, 5 to form a subcommittee in charge of finding the purchaser, and it goes on. And there's probably more true.
Well, Martin, Lewis is the oldest Masonic publisher in the world, founded in 1886, and you are the general manager. And you began working in the book industry at just 22 years old. Tell us how that happened.
Well, actually, at the time I was running my own book company. There's an author called Franz Barden, who I was so inspired by the works of that I wanted to do more to help people get hold of these. And that company, Faulks Books, it was functioning reasonably well. It had its own warehouse in Suffolk, and everything was doing wonderfully. And when I became a Mason, I met some of the people who were in charge of publishing there, and we really got on. So the chairman of Lewis Masonic and I distributed Masonic books for them. But after a while, we were working so closely that it seemed logical that I'd start to work for Lewis. And I've been there ever since. Now, Lewis was founded to actually help Freemasonry. So although it is an independent commercial company, it was a Scots Mason, John Hogg, who he initially started publishing poems about Scottish myths and folk tales. But when in London, he started to see that there was a need for Masonic books. In particular, at the time, there were no ritual books or monitors. People were starting to learn their ritual from exposés. And these exposés weren't accurate. And indeed, some of them were actually published by anti-Masons and had silly things in them. So he started to think, someone's got to do something about this.
Yes,
so
we had a... Yeah, go on.
So he published initially under the pseudonym A. Lewis, because he was a Lewis. And he wasn't quite sure how the Masons at the time would respond to his publication, so he kept his real identity secret. But the idea was that, like a Lewis, I don't know whether it's the same in America, but there's a bit of our Masonic teachings that say a son should really support his father, like a Lewis lifts a stone.
Yes, it's here in the United States too.
Oh, wonderful. So he wanted to form a company that would support Freemasonry. And Lewis has carried on doing that ever since. So
yes, go on.
The goal is to publish books which are commercially viable, but that also support Freemasonry. So that's the important thing.
Excellent. Yes, I have two things to say. As you pointed out, Lewis first began the website explains exclusively publishing ritual books for Masonic craft degrees through to the Masonic side orders. And if you're interested to learn more about these exposés, we had a Lewis author here, Dr. David Harrison. You can see his interview on our channel, and he goes a little bit into the history of these exposés. It's a fascinating topic, and I think you describe it beautifully. They were really they had an anti-Masonic agenda to kind of expose, right, what Freemasonry was about and the ritual, and so I think what Lewis did is wonderful, saying no, actually let's have a place, a Masonic publisher. So you are now general manager. What are your duties as general manager?
I think I'm responsible for making sure everything works, really. So I have an overview of the company and do my best to keep it on track.
Okay, so you really are a general manager, of everything.
Yes.
I think there will be a lot of interest by our US viewers, although our show is watched all around the world, according to our statistics, about Lewis. What is it like to work there? Is it a small company? Is it? Can you tell us a word about its culture?
Yeah, you have a American publisher which is almost as old as us, or perhaps even as old, called McCoy Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite interesting. McCoy and Lewis have been interacting for hundreds of years, and so it's a really interesting thing to see. At least maybe not hundreds of years, but for a considerable amount of time. And Lewis is a small family-owned company. It's part of the Ian Allen Group. So Ian Allen, the founder of Ian Allen Publishing, bought Lewis Masonic in I think it was in the 1920s. And the Allen family are very genuine, dedicated Masons and very astute businessmen as well. So Lewis is a very a small publishing company, and it still keeps that focus. So really practical guides and ritual books are the mainstay. But as you mentioned, we have other authors that write on history and write on the symbolism and philosophy of Freemasonry.
Tell us about the Square magazine. I know it's independent. Yes, it has a relationship, I think, to Lewis. Can you tell us about it?
So the Square is owned by Lewis Masonic, but
there we go.
Has control. And there's loads of Masonic magazines, aren't there? If you're a Freemason, at least in England, you can tell me the same in America, your state Grand Lodge, so in our case, the United Grand Lodge of England, will have its own magazine. And if you're a member of another unit, if you're in, we'd call it Rose Choir, but you'd call it Scottish Rite, you'd probably get a magazine from that. And there's free magazines that are associated with other things. You might be a member of a different lodge. So you end up with a lot of magazines. The Square is fiercely independent and covers everything. And it's really quite an interesting read. And sometimes it goes into areas that I would be cautious going into myself, but it really does encourage free discussion, and it's really a diverse, in-depth view. And yes, there you can see me in my lovely English regalia there.
Your United Grand Lodge of England, or UGL. That's how we tend to say it here, but UGLE is also a way. I don't think us here in the United States, we tend to not spell things out, but we'll say the United Grand Lodge of England. And so here you are, nicely dressed, and you have been very lucky to join excellent Masonic lodges. Tell us about them.
Yes, so my mother lodge is Burlington Lodge, which you kindly mentioned, and very distinguished lodge, and it's full of very noble people and people who have succeeded in life. I joined as a very young Mason, and very good because I had people there to guide me. So Masonry for me, Burlington meets 4 times a year. And I naturally bonded with the philosophers. So there were people there who had retired from their whole career, and they were studying theology and philosophy in their spare time. Yes, I can remember being given a copy of Plato's Republic on my my first degree and saying, right, we're going to talk about this next meeting.
Oh, nice. Look at that.
Now, you may or may not be aware, but there's a tradition of celebration in English Freemasonry.
I like that celebration.
Yes,
I
and
like the sound of that.
involves lots of good food and lots of good drink. And if we read the early minutes of Burlington Lodge, that the same distinguished brethren were members, and that they used to celebrate a lot. So often you'll see at the end of each set of minutes how many glasses they broke. Through, you can see, the amount of port they're drinking, glasses broken 3, and the charge to the tavern. And one meeting I saw says, glasses broken 7, windows broken 2.
Sounds like
wow.
Fred's kind of party. This is Fred's kind of thing.
When I first joined Burlington, it was very celebratory like that with philosophy. So I can remember many wonderful evenings talking philosophy most of the morning, and it meets in a gentleman's club in London. And of course, I don't really drink, and so it was hard for me to keep up with people who are more experienced in this area and of higher education philosophically than me. But I learned.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful balance of philosophy and social cheerfulness, which is, I think, both things are important in Masonry.
If I might jump in here, and got a couple of questions for Martin on Freemasonry. I noticed that you seem to be an advocate of Masonry's origin being Egyptian rather than the Gothic cathedral builders. Is that a fair statement, Martin?
I think there's been a lot of backdating with Masonry. There are some possibilities that some of the ideas we have could have come from Egypt, and whether that's through philosophical texts like Hermetic or Platonic texts, whether it's through the Collegia. I think it's possible that we have some of that current, that teaching as part of what we're doing. And I also sometimes wonder whether it's part of a sort of group psychology that people tend to reform in the same shape. An order disappears and 200 years later it appears in a different guise. So I don't think we have direct origins from Egypt. It'd be lovely to think, but I think there's definitely a influence which is strong.
Oh, Martin, in your book Enlightened Living, in chapter 12 under the heading Crown of Thorns, you talk about Mary being a symbol for this ability we have inside us to be reborn and to change who we are inside, to die and to become something better than before. Is this how you also think about a newly raised Mason? Has he been reborn, changed, and become something better?
Yes, I think not only has he just gone through an inspirational experience, which hopefully would lead him to improve areas of his life, but I also think it's probably the start of an ongoing journey of self-improvement. It's very interesting if we think about this, because Freemasonry is all about making good men better. You've probably heard this phrase said many a time. So let's talk a little bit about how that change happens. So to someone who's not a Freemason or doesn't hear about Freemasonry, they might find it a bit of a peculiar idea. If you said, I want to improve myself, I want to be a better person, people might suggest all sorts of things for self-improvement, but joining a society that performs rituals from the 1700s and with moral lessons in them, normally be perceived as transformative. And it's quite rare you hear a Freemason explain how would this change you? People see plays and they read books all the time, but it doesn't transform them into a different person, how is it that Masonic ritual has this quality to make you a better person? Can it bring about virtue? And this is something that I find very exciting, and I've studied quite a bit. So let's go back in time now. Let's go back into the 1700s, and let's look at why they believed it would transform someone and lead to a rebirth. In the time, they believed that memorization was a means to improve yourself. And I mean directly. So if you memorize the Psalm about being cautious, you'd become more cautious because it was in your mind. It was like putting a program into your mind. And that's quite an interesting idea. Have you ever noticed that Masons actually start speaking phrases from Masonic ritual in their normal language? You ever noticed that?
Yeah, like they pull it from it's their sort of the database, right?
Yeah, so it becomes part of the database. And so I believe they were probably right. It's very interesting to think that. So if you memorize something, that almost that idea becomes part of you. And I found that even if I read the same book a lot, I almost start to convert to its view on the world without realizing it. So I think the memorization of ritual also adds to that rebirth, that change. One other thing, we mentioned meditation. In Buddhism, the performance of ritual is seen as an active form of meditation. Oh, I love that picture. I've never seen that before.
I thought you would.
I'm amazed you found that so quickly.
Well, it was in my database, Martin. I knew about it already.
So let's think about this, the next aspect. So learning to perform ritual in a word perfect manner. So emulation style, that's what emulation ritual is about, is most certainly a form of meditation. So for anyone who's not a Mason, or perhaps that comes from an organization that doesn't memorize, doing things from memory in front of people, especially for the lengths that we do in Masonry, requires a Zen-like focus and precision. So I think that actually improves Masons' concentration abilities, their ability to be mindful. And you've probably noticed this. I'd like to hear your take on this. You tend to make mistakes in Masonic ritual when you lose focus. So you drift off. Before you know it, the bit where you're meant to be joining in has happened. Mm-hmm. So if you let any distractions in, trouble's going to happen. So I think those two training methods bring around this big rebirth, this big change that Masons are seeking. The awe and inspiration of actually going through a ceremony, I think that's important, and I think that has an effect. And it can be on different levels. That's the lovely thing about it. So it's hard to describe, again, for anyone who's watching this who hasn't gone through these ceremonies. It's a bit like when you watch a movie, when you watch a film and you think, that's it, I'm going to change my life. That's when you really learn the book. And I do that all the time. I find everything inspirational. It's for me, it's the opposite. It's learning what things not to act on. Always got a great new idea. So yes, that's a very long answer to a very simple question. Yes, I think the has gone through a change, but he's also at the beginning of a greater change that comes from his ongoing work. And I think this is what we're all about. This is the important thing.
Freemasonry is a way of life, and it's a change in life to where we are practicing the virtues of Freemasonry and a certain moral way of dealing with society and with other people that's perhaps a lot different than when we first came in the door?
Now, this is very interesting point to raise. So when I first became a Mason, I had a very simple view of the process of self-improvement and the valuable things. What I didn't realize was a lot of the more subtle things, they also have a big effect. So one of the things about Masonry is that you end up meeting lots of different people, people who would otherwise be at a perpetual distance.
Yeah.
I sat in Scottish lodges, which are mostly full of people who are in the fishing industry. And yeah, it's a very different meeting than that takes place in the Travelers Club on Pall Mall. It's a very different, and learning to get on with people no matter what their walk of life is, no matter what their experiences are. A very wise friend of mine once said to me that after 20 years of Freemasonry, he'd learned how to get on with people he doesn't get on with.
Nicely put.
And that's it's a very awkward way of saying it, but it's true. You learn to adapt, and you learn to see things from a different point of view. And I think it's a lot of people hold these ideals, but Freemasonry's organization gives you a chance to actually practice it. So you will be sitting next to someone from a different culture, a different race, a different religion, different background, and as an equal in an environment. And yeah, you're sat having a meal next to them. I know that's not so much always a practice in America, but in England, certainly we always have meals.
Wonderful. And that's what the principles are there for. You all have this moral setting and compass and set of teachings and principles to help guide that interaction along. If there ever is a conflict or a difficulty, you can all look to the principles and say, Masonically, you're my equal, even though I don't get along with you. You know, we are here in this setting, and that's wonderful. You touched upon the one topic that I just have to ask. I just cannot end this interview, which we're not close to ending, but without asking this question. In your personal life and in your work, how do you, being an expert on this diverse set of philosophies, one, how does it all come together for you in your work, in your personal life? And two, if you don't mind, if I can throw this one in too, do you find them in line with Masonic teachings all the time? Or do you find the martial arts, especially in meditation teachings, to be sometimes in conflict with Freemasonry?
Yes, for me, the core, the main focus of my life is Hermeticism. And this is the most important thing, and all other disciplines are disciplines that I've explored in order to help learn a lesson. Now, sometimes there are differences in opinion. So, for example, Freemasonry is a very Boy Scout view of morality.
What do you mean?
Yeah, so in Freemasonry there are set moral laws, there are set ways of doing things, and you don't move away from them. It's about being harmonious with the place you are living, being a good citizen, about being polite, about being honest, agreements with people, about being a good role in life, whether it be in your job, whether it be in your relationships. So being a good husband or a good partner, these kind of things. And it's got a very traditional view of this. So in martial arts, they cater for more emergency times. And so there could be a circumstance, and people love to have these moral lessons, whereby what if you needed to lie to save your own life? Freemasonry says
lie.
No, Freemasonry
like tell a lie.
Yeah, so you have to tell a lie to save your life or others. Freemasonry is very direct with this. You don't lie. And indeed, we have a part of our ceremony, a sort of death before dishonor. Whereas you can imagine in some of the Oriental studies, these are emergency skills, which may talk about duplicity as an emergency response. And so these you can see are in conflict. So yes, sometimes there are things where you do need to think from different points of view and reflect. For me, what I'm after is the truth. So behind everything, what is actually the best way of doing things? Where I am, what I find exciting. And actually, one of the values of Masonry is it probably stops me getting too serious. You know, if I hadn't had the social side of Masonry, which is very important, I'd probably I've made a very good monk. And so when I talk to other Masons about what they find very interesting, often I have to correct my mind, because what I hear is a list of meals in different locations. And I have to remember that there's a lot of value in these meals in different locations, and that I need to be more open-hearted, less strict with these things.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I'm going to put it in my own words, and you can correct me if I misunderstand you. You do have the social side of Freemasonry in a very aesthetic teachings, which is very monk-like. And we were showing some photographs of you, I mean, meditating in snow and walking on fire. They're coming. I'm getting to them, which is very, very much a very minimalist path. And so in Freemasonry, with all the meals and the cheerfulness and the drinking, Fred, that goes on, you know, that has its own value, and you have to remember that. Am I approximating what you said?
Yeah, and I'd like to add, you know, because I see it even a little bit differently, because there is a definite effect to the camaraderie of Freemasonry as you practice it together, where you're with brothers and you're doing things with brothers, versus perhaps some of the meditations or martial arts where you're off by yourself doing work within yourself. And that work within yourself is a little bit different from working in a group where you're hugging other Masons and you're getting, you know, the vibes off them and that kind of thing. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely, and it's very wise what you've just said there. So as a character, I'm a very austere, serious person, and I have a very set routine in life. You know, I get up in the morning and do my meditation and do my physical exercise. I do the same every evening. So I'm a natural ascetic who works in a company and spends his time in a dining club. It may, you know, that's one aspect of it. So often I find myself in a interesting situation where I'm not a natural team player, and naturally, when I think about things, often they are alone things. I spend a lot of time alone, and I spend a lot of time on retreat in the mountains. So Freemasonry, rather than a conflict, is often a cure for me. And I think it can be a very positive thing, actually being in an environment where you have to get out of your comfort zone if you're a lone wolf. they say that to achieve excellence, you should practice the things you find hardest, not exclusively the things you find easy. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I have a comment. Yes, you're ascetic. Yes, you have all this discipline and meditation, but you write humorous Masonic books. Now, how does that fit into this?
The honest answer is this. I thought, wow, there must be a way to raise money for charity and to time. And initially, I attempted to find an author who put together a book of just jokes about Freemasonry. So Freemasons tell silly jokes to each other. So here's the one you can see on the cover here. Why don't crocodiles eat Freemasons? Because they lodge in their throat. So Freemasons have all sorts of these jokes. And I heard these jokes and I thought, if we could put together a book of these wonderful Masonic jokes, it would be fun for Freemasonry. It would really help raise money for charity. But such an undertaking involves quite a bit of work. And in the end, you can see that one's for the Masonic Samaritan Fund. In the end, I thought, right, I'm hearing these jokes. Here is an opportunity to genuinely do good in the world. And it's just there. You work for the company, you're hearing these jokes all the time. So every time I got one, I wrote it down. In the end, I managed to put this into a series of joke books, and each one of them was for a charity, which right now is helping someone. So all the royalties from these books go directly to actively supporting someone. This was for the RMBI, which was actually founded by a very senior member of Burlington, a Dr. Crucifix. Isn't that a cool name?
Oh, jeez. Yes. And for our audience, these books can be found on the Lewis Masonic website and also on Amazon US. We saw them. Is this correct, Martin?
Yes, absolutely. So you could also go to McCoy Publishing, and you're in America. And just remember, when you purchase these books, not only does it give you an opportunity to tell these wonderful Masonic jokes at your lodge, but you're actively helping someone who needs some help. So these are Masonic charities, which I all know personally, and I've seen their good works. So it's a win-win situation, apart from the members of your lodge that have to listen to such.
Yeah, you can be the hit at the next meeting if you get these. What a great project.
Time is passing so quickly here. We're having such a good time that we ought to perhaps move on into Martin's martial arts and his thoughts on Hermeticism.
Sure. Do you have a question in mind, Fred? I would like to just mention, Martin, you started martial arts at age 5, so you were arguably not knowing what you were getting into, and it just sparked something in you, and you have gone ever since, which inspires me when I see kids now, doing martial arts. You go, you never know, that might be a Martin.
Ah, yes.
Right there. And you have won, championships. Tell us about some of your most notable championships that you have participated in and won.
Well, it's interesting. When you did the introduction, you mentioned that I won the Norfolk fencing champion when I was young, and it dawned on me. I was sitting, I think, I'm drinking tea from the actual cup that they gave me in this, as part of this.
Can we see it again?
Sorry. So I won a fencing tournament in Norwich, and winning the tournament was I got to go on a special fencing course, a camp.
I was going to say a cup. Was that the prize? Yeah.
Part of it. And then, a proper World Cup type thing. Anyway, this fencing course, the Olympic fencing coaches, and it also had the rock star Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden.
Oh.
Yes, we learned that. And yes, it was a great privilege to be able to attend such a course.
Wow, what about this photograph here? Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, this is a very young Martin. Oh, it's wonderful to see that. So when I was very young, I think you mentioned 5, maybe 5 or 6, my mother decided that I needed something to do with my energy. And she took me to a martial art class. And little did I know that was going to be the beginning of a big adventure. Now, I think martial arts, whether it be Oriental martial arts, like this is a martial art called Kuksul Won. It's a Korean martial art. It's a wonderful discipline. Or whether it be a Western discipline like boxing or fencing, is a very good practice, and it really does help you to develop self-control, keep yourself fit, and be able to defend yourself. I think there's lots of hidden benefits there. That might be where my not being such a good team player developed, because I obviously, when other people playing group sports like football or these kind of things, I was performing kicks in my garden like that. As time's gone on, what's happened with me in martial arts is very interesting. I used to, in my life, approach things using pure energy. So it didn't quite work for me. I'd escalate how much energy I put into it. So with martial arts training,
attention, focus.
Yeah, so I'd add. So if I wasn't achieving martial arts, I'd do more lessons, I'd do more classes, I'd do more things. If I wasn't getting where I wanted to in life, I'd add more disciplines on. What's happened is, as I've come to the second half of my life, instead of building up, I've started to cut away. So nowadays, I define myself more by what I don't do, and I let go of things a lot more, and my life is becoming more and more simple.
So you're minimizing. You've been cutting down.
Yes, and with martial arts, I still practice sword. You can see some techniques there. I still practice qigong. I still there are some ancient forms of exercise that involve tensing the muscles and lifting weights from the Shaolin Temple. Sometimes I practice with friends, but it's very rare. I live a very Zen life nowadays. So there's me. I lift weights every day, and I think this has been very good. And I think weightlifting really is the fountain of youth. And if we can combine this with our breath, we can put our energy into our breath. I think this is a very positive. So my books are more about my adventure. There are far better martial artists than me, and I spend 2 hours a day practicing meditation, and they spend 2 hours a day practicing their martial art forms or fighting with people. I've got to the point in my life where it's hard to get motivated towards achievements involving fighting. So now it's more self-defense and defense skills. The answers that I need now, I don't think are with anyone that I can seek out. I think I've been very, very lucky, and I've trained with some extremely enlightened and very positive people who have really taken time to guide me and have helped me overcome my limitations.
That's what really intrigues me about you, Martin, because you've traveled to seek out teachers. I mean, you've to study under Hermetic and Rosicrucian masters in Bohemia, masters of Chinese Taoism, Indian yoga, and even Yambushi monks in the mountains of Japan. That's some traveling, man. Tell us about this traveling.
Well, let's start off with talking about a great master who's very close to you. In America, there is a teacher called Stephen Case. Was one of the first Americans to bring, or first Westerners to learn ninjutsu. And Stephen Hayes has served as the bodyguard for the Dalai Lama and spent a long time studying in Tibet. So if you're watching this film and you would like to explore the Oriental teachings and would like to meet someone I consider an enlightened master. So there are great masters in the Czech Republic. There are Hermetic teachers there who are the highest level of development I've seen a person exemplify. And there are great masters in the mountains in Japan. The Yamabushi are certainly worth spending time with, as are the Zen teachers. If you would like to find someone close to home, then Stephen Hayes is certainly in this caliber, and any time spent with him can be transformative. He is. I've had conversations with him which have led to waking up experiences for me. Actually, it's like opened a whole new way of understanding the world.
This is a very...
And he's in Dayton.
He's what?
He is in Dayton, Ohio.
Well, thank you for that.
And, so
I think Frederick pointed out a fascinating part of Martin's teachings, which is very traditional and martial arts and meditation like aspects of seeking out somebody who can teach you. And when you are sort of stuck, you seek out that teacher that is good at what you want to learn or what you want to develop. And I think that's very, very martial artsy. And you definitely incorporate that into your work. And we are nearing the end of the interview. I think it's worth talking about your book, Enlightened Living. What is enlightenment? You talk about enlightenment here for a little bit. For Freemasons who are watching mostly, but also the general public, how do you understand this concept of enlightening living or enlightenment?
Okay. So let's imagine we could get to a circumstance in life when we were in harmony with everything. So we could think of excellence through harmony. Everyone can see how small things in life can make big changes. And enlightenment is about cultivating those good changes and learning to move your motives in life towards making every action as motivated towards the best outcome for all.
Yeah, Fred and I read the book, and I have to tell our audience, because we're showing these pictures, these photos of you doing incredible feats. This book is meant for the everyday person. The tips in there are not for advanced meditation or martial artists of any kind. It incorporates different currents. We found references from Hermeticism to Christianity, a lot of philosophy, but there are why don't you tell us, Martin, what's the purpose of the book? Who is it intended for?
Yes, the purpose of the Enlightened Living is to bring your self-development training into actual life. So we talked today about all sorts of tools for self-improvement, whether it be performing a special ceremony or taking part in one, memorizing something, meditating, practicing a martial arts. But let's just imagine for a moment, let's the three of us join in a dream whereby somebody could improve in every moment. Let's imagine that when we write our signature, that's our calligraphy class. When I speak to you now, this is my training in rhetoric, because I'm trying to communicate as best I can the information on all levels, with great eloquence and with the right level of emotion. Everyday life, we seem to get to a certain level of competence in what we're doing and then stop. So if you watch someone in a job, you can see that they've been there 10 years, but they're still making the same mistakes. They're still doing the same thing that they did when they began. So enlightened living is about learning in every moment. And I learn a lot from observing others. So enlightened living is a series of different improvements, and some of them are from Freemasonry. We have some wonderful lessons in our craft, which are made to be applied in normal everyday life. The idea is that you do apply them in there. But many of them are actually from personal experience, when I've seen, how do I make sure that I always think before I speak? How do I make sure I've got a good posture and a good mental posture in everyday life? How do I overcome those failures that keep happening? So, you know, if you look in most people's life, there's some cyclical pattern whereby they're always trying to improve something. And I find them really exciting, especially in me, when I'm trying to achieve something and for some reason there's no learning. How do I overcome that? So enlightened living is about learning in every moment and making your life your training, so that while you're here, you can reach your full potential. You can be fully engaged with every breath of life. Isn't that an amazing idea? And utilize it for the best outcomes for you and everyone around you.
Martin, what I find interesting is that your solutions often involve turning the problem around, remaking a negative to be a positive. That was very interesting.
Yes, this is very important for me, and I think I don't think without this key you can farm. People talk about eliminating bad qualities or getting rid of bad habits. What I've found is that if you try to do that, they come up in different funny ways. So what I've worked out from experience is that almost everything I've ever observed in behavior, no matter how negative, is attempting to do something. So it's a bit of a misexpression of things. So it's a seed that has a potential to be something wonderful. So sometimes we find confused approximations which are aimed to try to bring an outcome we want. So let's imagine someone wants lots of friends. We all would like lots of friends. But they don't have the skill set to actually achieve that through genuine, correct means, by being a really good friend. You might find that person bullies people and tries to be aggressive to them so that the person is fearful and is kind back. Mm-hmm. You might find they try to manipulate them in funny ways. The base motive to be a popular person and to have friends is the seed. So we need to correct that. And I've come to believe that your worst vices, so everyone watching this ever, if you stop and have a think about the worst aspect of you or the worst aspect of your behavior, believe your greatest potential hidden. If you're an attention seeker, you'd make a great entertainer. If you're a very angry person, maybe it's time to become a policeman or join the military and use that anger in a righteous way, turn it to justice, because that's probably what you're trying to do, is change the world into a form that you could prefer to see. This kind of thing, and looking to the root. And I think this is a really important thing. So their blessings in disguise are shortcomings. And obviously sometimes they get so extreme that it may be very hard to search back to the root. But it's normally a dysfunctional expression. And sometimes these are learned when you're very young, or they're emergency strategies. Mm-hmm. You were once in a situation where you didn't have time to learn a new skill. So you responded. So maybe you became very shy. because you didn't have time to learn to eloquently explain your position. This would be an emergency strategy that maybe could go beyond now. And
well, Martin, we are having a great time. We are nearing the end. There are a few Masonic photos that I really would like to just get a word on before we part. What was this occasion? Can you tell us who these people are?
This is me meeting the Duke of Kent. His Royal Highness, the Duke of Kent, is the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England. This was at the opening of the 300-year celebration, the tercentenary display at the Library Museum there. If you're ever in London, go to the Library Museum. It's open to everyone. It's a wonderful thing.
So did you have a great celebratory time for the 300, Martin, over there?
Yes. In fact, it's still going on. In October, there's going to be a very big celebration at the Albert Hall. And for me, it's a wonderful thing to see this. Celebration is a really powerful thing.
Yes.
And here's a lesson from Enlightened.
It's our theme here, Martin. We know.
Well, let me end on this theme. I've noticed something really important. If you watch people who are extremely good at something, a sportsman, an artist, someone who is extremely good at an individual area of their life, they will also have another special skill. They will be experts celebrators.
Look at that. Look at that.
As whenever there's slight improvements, they celebrate more and better than most people. And I've noticed they tend to repeat 2 or 3 times their happiness. And I think celebration, it enhances whatever you celebrate. So celebrate all the good things you want to improve in yourself, the good things you want to see more of in the world. And I think this is a key to spreading harmonious and positive effects.
And one more thing, because I think that we can't leave without stressing the word that you consider most important, and that is harmony.
Yes. Yes. Do you want to tell us a word about, well, you did explain living a harmonious life with your environment, and that concept is more developed in enlightened living. And there's one person we wanted to include here, which is your girlfriend, Kendra. And she does some very interesting historical work, and she's often found in costumes. Can you give us a word about her and what she does?
Well, it's lovely to see that picture. She's dressed as a pirate there, and Kendra is a historian, and she's a very well-educated, academically sound historian. She's got a first from Bath University Spa, and she teaches by wearing the authentic clothing of the age.
Wonderful.
So you can imagine what some of the things us Masons wear. And in my life, she's a wonderful compliment, because we talked about the balance, and a lot of Freemasonry is about balance between the masculine, the feminine, the sun, the moon, we could say the yin and the yang, these 2 pillars of King Solomon's temple. Kendra has really shown me the value in little things, the beauty in everything here, and show me that true enlightenment isn't about hiding in the mountains. It's not about cutting off from material things. It's about really loving and really engaging with the world. And I think this is a very important lesson. Her adventures through time, they take me all sorts of places. Often she's dressed as a female knight, and she knows all the Western sword fighting, which is very different than in the Orient. Sometimes she'll be a Renaissance lady in the costume, and she gives beautiful talks. which involve a lot of costume changes. As you can imagine, she keeps me on the straight and narrow. Freemasons have romantic souls. You can see this from the beginning, and we like to speculate. We are speculative Masons. For a historian, this can be tough, hearing some of the theories we come up with.
Yes. Yes. Well, you said she's an expert in knights, and if that's her expertise, I can imagine she has quite a bit to say about knighthood within Freemasonic lore.
Oh yes, certainly, and Freemasons love to speak to Kendra because they can ask her all sorts of things about arms and armor and chivalry, and they've got somebody who can really engage with what's happening there. It is a very good thing because obviously Kendra often ends up at different events, whether it be the Grand Lodge of England or the regular Grand Lodge of Italy, or whether we're in a Masonic lodge in the outback of Southern America, that she manages to have fun.
Well, excellent, and thank you, Kendra, for right after the fact for letting us include you here. You're just fascinating. We thought we would do that. And Martin, we cannot thank you enough for coming. This has been a wonderful talk. As always, we have an Artifact of the Month video to show you. Thank you, our audience. Martin, do you have any last words you want to say?
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute honor.
I guess it's that's all we have.
Yeah, that's all we have for you this time.
Parting on the square.
Pots. Welcome to the 8th installment of Phoenix Masonry Live's Masonic Artifact Series.
I'm Frederick L. Milliken, Executive Director of Phoenix Masonry.
And I am Elena Llamas, Director of Public Relations for Phoenix Masonry. And today we have this wonderful cooking pig artifact to show you, which is a Shriner pig. You can see the fess. It is cooking eggs on one side and meat on the other. It has a compartment in the bottom for batteries, the huge kind, and when it's turned on, it flips the egg. The front of it says Leroy H. Krager, Potentate, El Becal Temple, Long Beach, California. You can see what he's wearing in the back. This artifact was recently shown on the Pawn Stars show, hosted by the History Channel. The mechanical toy they featured was a regular cooking pig. This one has been converted to a Shriner item. Both mechanical toys flip the eggs. You can see this one was fully converted to represent El Becal Temple in the front. And it was appraised on the pawn shop show without the Shriner theme at $300.
We have a little bit of the history of the shrine with some old photographs for you today. The great shrine organization of today traces its origins to New York City and to 4 dedicated men. The men were Dr. William M. Fleming, William J. Florence, Charles T. McClellan, and William S. Patterson. It was Fleming's idea to establish a fun fraternal order for men who had completed their requirements in the Scottish or York Rite Masonic organizations. Fleming presented his idea to William Florence. Like Fleming, a resident of Albany, New York, who became a world-renowned actor. From the beginnings in 1871, Mecca Temple, through 1920 approximately, there was no single approved philanthropy. The temples were generous, however, in supporting various local and national charities. In 1919, the Honorable W. Freeland Kendrick, potentate of Lulu from 1906 through 1918, and later mayor of Philadelphia 1924 through 1928, launched the idea that the shrine should undertake something for friendless, orphaned, and crippled children. The following year, 1920, at the Imperial Council session in Portland, Oregon, Imperial Sir Kendrick introduced, and it was adopted, a motion to establish a Shriners Hospital for crippled children. An annual assessment of $2 from every Shriner to support the hospital was approved, and a committee of 7 was appointed by Imperial Sir Kendrick to implement the program. The Shrine Hospital has grown to its current size of 19 hospitals in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and 3 Burns Institutes. The name has changed to the Shrine Hospitals for Children. Every Shriner today contributes $5 of his annual membership dues to the hospital system. Freeland Kendrick, known as Free or Freel, became known as the father of the hospital system. He served on the national board, he chaired it for many years, and served on the Philadelphia Hospital Board until his death, March 20th, 1953. After serving as Imperial Potentate 1919 through 1920, Freel returned to Lulu, where he again served as Potentate for 3 years, 1921 through 1923. With humor befitting the Shrine philosophy, the founders of the ancient Arabic order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine of North America, on looking around, decided that America was a suitable place to rest the camels of the great caravan, that the shade of the old apple trees was cool and delicious, and her sharifs, bashi bazooks, and wall dervishes were thirsty for knowledge.
Linked here below, you can find some wonderful information on the order that we have up on our website. We want to thank you for joining us on this, our 8th installment of Phoenix Masonry Live's Masonic Artifact Series. Until next time.